Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of This Is 8CD. My name is Jerry Scullion and I'm a human-centred service designer based in the beautiful city of Dublin, Ireland. Now today on the show I'm joined by Stephen Puri, a fascinating guest who lived in two very different worlds, from producing Oscar-winning effects on blockbusters like Independence Day to raising $20 million in venture capital and running multiple startups. Stephen has seen the highs and lows of both Hollywood and Silicon Valley. Now, there's three things in this conversation that I think you're going to resonate with. The first thing is the shift from the hustle culture of Hollywood to the intentional design. Stephen is brutally honest about how unsustainable the industry grind was and how he redesigned his life around clarity and purpose. Now, the second thing is redefining productivity. He makes powerful case studies for measuring impact by outcomes, not by hours under fluorescent lights, something many of us will resonate with. And the third thing is the role of well-being, practices like yoga, not as a lifestyle accessory, but as a survival tool that helped him through failure, burnout, and rebuilding. If you're questioning your own definition of productivity or what successes really look like, you're going to love this one. Please don't forget to subscribe to This Is 8CD. It helps those beautiful algorithms just by something simple as liking this and sharing it. Really helps other people find the podcast. It helps us grow, find new audiences, and ultimately it helps try and make a difference in the world. I know you're going to enjoy this one, so let's jump straight in. Stephen, how are you doing? I'm delighted to have you on the podcast. Maybe you might start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from and what you do.
Just dive right in. I love that.
Pretty much.
Okay, for those playing at home or driving in their car, here is the short version of why this may be interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few people you'll meet that has been a senior executive at two motion picture studios, at DreamWorks and Fox.
Yeah.
And has also raised over $20 million of venture capital and run three companies, one successful exit and two failures, which were painful, by the way. So in the course of doing that, learned a lot about energy levels and productivity and sort of mental awareness and how certain environments can be designed for success, because I happen to work with a lot of successful people. Mm-hmm. And have done a lot of the reading of the people who came before us who said, hey, let me dig into this, and left us a really great set of learning. So that's really what I hope we get into today.
So what was life like for Stephen before you explored productivity? How did you work, and what was your style of work like before you really had that reflective?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of it was, I want to say, unconsidered, in that, oh, well, this is the pattern of the people around me, therefore I shall match it.
Yeah.
So when I got out of college, university too,
yes,
I was in Los Angeles. I went to the University of Southern California, which even though I had a background in engineering, my parents were both engineers at IBM. So I was a little junior software engineer who went to school, and a lot of my friends were in cinema TV. So when I fell into that world of, filmmakers and computers were doing film and stuff, right? It was a culture of, hey man, if you're not here at 4 a.m., are you really part of the team? Okay, so I'm 20, 21, 22 years old. I'm like, this is how it works. And there was not a lot of, let me study energy and patterns and mental awareness. There was no Huberman podcast, and things like that. And so I got pretty deeply into that. And when I started my first company, it was off doing Independence Day. I produced, to be clear, so I started in film because as someone who knew engineering and was somewhat creative, there was this field of digital image. Yeah. Computers were suddenly powerful enough to say we could create an entire film image. And then you had that explosion of CG companies, right? I happened to produce the digital effects or the digital titles and stuff for a number of movies. So I got to work with Jim Cameron on True Lies, David Fincher on Seven. I did Braveheart and Immortal Beloved with Mel. I worked with Woody Allen, Jim Jarmusch, and Johnny Depp and Dead Man, a bunch of stuff, right? But when I went on Independence Day and produced the digital effects, we happened to win the Academy Award for the visual effects in that movie. Which is a group achievement. There are 1,000 people who are really responsible for that. I'm just one of them. But a rising tide lifts all boats. So I started my first company because the director and producer and writer of Independence Day and I got along really well. We're like, let's do a company together to do these digital things, right? So that was my first company I started. We raised about 15 million in venture, and it was my first exit. Now, I definitely had looked at what I had seen and matched that, which is, we have to have this certain kind of hustle culture. People are here late at night. We're ordering pizzas at midnight. We know the only place, in Santa Monica that delivered pizzas at 1 a.m. Like, is that sort of culture, right? So I would say it's not intentional design. It's designed by just pattern matching that which was around. Later in my film days, as a development executive, I started to see patterns in who was burning out, who was going to the wayside, screw this is way too much for way too little return. And then when I went back into tech, I think around Die Hard 5, Wolverine, the Wolverine sequel, that was when I was at Fox running those franchises. And I was like, these are terrible movies. This is not what I want to wake up, be doing when I'm 40, 50 years old. And the only other thing I knew how to do was engineering. So I went full circle from engineering into film back into engineering and applied a lot of those lessons.
So let's come back to that question around the ways of working. So you left university. It sounds like pretty much how I imagine American culture, especially American movie culture, to be, where, as you said, it was the hustle culture of, up early, American Psycho, Christian Bale.
Wow. I think American Psycho is set in Manhattan in finance, but okay, we'll go with it.
High flying, kind of up early, working out, sharing.
Rails of cocaine for breakfast. I mean, you get it. We all did that, right?
I know it's like having a private driver and all of that kind of stuff. We're working really very, very hard, very long hours. And that probably speaks to a lot more around the American culture of you don't get as many holiday days as you do in Europe. True. And so forth. Yeah. But generally speaking, when you were in your early 20s or mid 20s, the people that you looked up to at that stage, they might have lived through that for 20 or 30 years. What were you seeing in people that you might have respected and worked with who were in seniority within those companies? Were they living happy, fulfilled lives? Or were they really rich and pretty miserable? And what did that look like? Sort of the future
I can't imagine that you have an idea what the answer is, but let me just spring it upon you, right?
Yeah.
I saw a couple of things. I saw the people who were burned out and left. I saw people who still believed there was a brass ring right above them and were hustling into their 30s, 40s, and sometimes 50s, right? Yeah. And then there were people who had often done whatever was necessary, and I'm just going to leave it at that, to advance their careers and may have achieved the thing that they were looking for, which would have been got their movie made, got their TV series made a certain amount of money, that sort of thing, got a table at the restaurant, bought the house in Bel Air, whatever. And usually at that point in their life, we're really struggling with having children, trying to reconcile what they had done, how many of those families were divorced. I saw the repercussions of that kind of mentality play out once you're actually not a solo operator, but you have maybe a husband or a wife, and then you have kids. And those concepts around what values do we have, which, you and I have talked about this. I'm having my son in 8 weeks, my first child, and I've been thinking a lot about what have I and what will I do to influence the world to be slightly better? Because I'm going to be gone one day, and this is going to be his world. And did I leave it better or worse?
Yeah. What role did you play? I mean, let's go back to that transition period of where you were in the hustle culture and you exited. You were reflecting and you were kind of projecting yourself into the future, saying, if I maintain this kind of cadence, I maintain this lifestyle, I maintain this working style as well, it probably doesn't lend itself to what you were hoping to achieve with your life. Is that fair?
Are you telling me when I went out of film development back into tech, that turn?
I guess not even career focus. It's more about you were planning your life. You were seeing that there was a shift required in the way you were living, and things had to change.
Okay. So I think what you're probing at is that period of time. And let me tell you, there are a couple things that influenced how I designed that next era of my life, right?
Exactly.
So at Fox, I'm not going to name names, but
Please do.
but Fox was a News Corp company, and
Okay.
style comes from the top.
Right.
Period. Okay. So there were a number of movies on my slate as a senior executive there, as a vice president. There are basically the way the studios are set up is you have like a chairperson, and they're coordinating all the departments and they're green lighting movies, right? And then just beneath them, you have usually 6 to 8 vice presidents of different flavors: senior vice president, executive vice president, vice president, right? Yeah. And the studio slate is divided among them. So you are an advocate for your portion of the studio slate. So if let's say there are 400 projects in development, books the studio has bought to make into movies, video games, scripts, pitches, and there are 8 vice presidents. That means each one is basically responsible for 50 of these projects.
Yeah.
Math, right? So you're the advocate for those. Some of those are ones that you buy where you're like, hey man, I bought this Scullion project. It's a biopic about this guy. And some of them are, hey, I got the Lego rights. You know what I mean? And you are the advocate to say, this is why we should make this movie. So I had a moment at Fox where I was like, wow, the original projects. When the guy who was the chairman of Fox Films Entertainment recruited me, he was super clear. He's like, I will buy you out of DreamWorks. I will double your salary. I will give you the Wolverine. I'll give you the Die Hard franchise. You probably grew up watching Die Hard. Do you want to be the guy making the next Die Hard movie? Sounded pretty cool. He's like, we have a lot of money. We have Avatar money around. So I will give you a checkbook to go buy projects from the writers that won't work here. But you have relationships with them from DreamWorks, because DreamWorks was a writer-friendly studio. It was the only studio run by a filmmaker. And that was amazing working for Steven and Stacy, So he was like, come here and bring over, Alex Kurtz and Bob Worcester. Bring over Damon Lindelof. Bring over, Billy Ray and Chris McQuarrie and like these amazing, amazing writers. So I had a bunch of these on my slate. The only one that he cared about was Die Hard 5. He's like, I could give him updates on like, oh man, I've got Chris McQuarrie doing this, da, da, da. And he'd be like, like you're reading a list of dirty underwear that need to go to the laundry. And at the end of it, he'd be like, So how's Die Hard 5? And I realized that movie, even though the script was terrible, written by a guy who was later kicked out of the Writers Guild for plagiarism, that was just a studio franchise that was going to get made. And it's called show business. It's not called show art.
Yeah.
So that was a real crisis for me of like, wow, I got this amazing job that's, a lot of people envy, but I'm just the guy sitting in the chair. There'll be someone else here in 2 years. There was someone here 2 years ago. Someone else would be making Die Hard 19, and it really doesn't matter. It's sausage, right? Yeah. Around the same time, yoga came into my life. I was in India, discovered yoga. There was something about that melding of the spiritual and the physical that definitely affected me.
Okay.
And I had tried it a couple years earlier. My girlfriend was the director of marketing for a chain called Yoga Works, and she had given me like a free class card, like 8 or 10 classes. She'd give me a yoga mat. I tried it. I was like, I don't get it. And like 2 years later, I tried it. I was like, oh, now suddenly I understand the gift she was trying to give me, and I just wasn't ready. Right?
What shifted there? Because I've tried yoga and it didn't resonate with me, and I haven't tried it since. But what shifted for you in those 2 years?
Well, this is the thing is I know the effect it had on me, as opposed to I can't pinpoint like, well, because this had spiritually changed me, I was ready for it. But I knew that the clarity that came from it was something I craved then. But I don't know that when I was in like development, that kind of clarity I valued the same way.
Right.
And so those pieces of, okay, what I'm doing is basically meaningless. Die Hard 5 will not affect the world in any way. Yoga came to me and I had a clarity of thought. Those things together affected me. And I was like, I think I need to choose something that's more meaningful, that's probably higher risk. Doing startups are higher risk. I did 2 startups before a Sukha company that failed. And man, was that coupled with embarrassment, because all my friends in film were watching. They're like, I was one of the first film guys to leave film. Now, obviously, everyone's kind of left film. But when I left, it was like, what are you doing going into technology? Like, you're going to be a geek and sit behind a computer? You could be making films, And when my first company failed, I just wanted to crawl under a rock. I didn't want to bump into friends at the dry cleaners because they'd be like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, Jerry, actually awful. Like, I'm probably going to close my company. I raised $3 million. I think I'm going to lose all my investors' money. Lost $750,000 of my own money. And I was like, this is painful,
Yeah.
But yoga helped me through that. Every day, that was an hour of just like a cleansing sort of physical practice, which I didn't get from weightlifting. I didn't get from trying to be a runner, which I suck at. I'm just not good at running, like things like that. Didn't get it from anything else.
So let's talk about productivity. Okay. What does it mean and who defines what it means to be productive?
I'm going to open this, which is not a beer. For those listening at home, the sound you're going to hear is that is a water, just so that I can speak clearly and answer
I've had one of those cans of water before. It's kind of like an anticlimax.
Right. Can of water brought to you by the Coors Corporation. I'm kidding. It's not a beer. So, or an ale or an IPA or anything fancy. I don't even drink. I hope that the world moves towards this. Work productivity is measured by the effect of your actions as opposed to how long those actions took, where they were performed. So, I'm a big advocate for a flexible work environment. So I really think productivity needs to be about how do you walk into a staff meeting or onto a staff Zoom and say, hey man, I had a thought. And everyone on that goes, wow, that kind of changes the trajectory of our company. We should do, what Jerry said, like right now, like this is a great idea. That to me is productivity as opposed to, hey man, we're all under the same fluorescent lights for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, great, right? We're being productive. We're all here. I don't think that that's necessarily a correlation.
Okay. It's funny that I'm speaking to you today because I was only speaking to one of my friends earlier on today where I feel like I'm in a productivity lull over the last.
Why do you feel that way? What tells you that?
Well, I tell myself that, okay, because I hold myself to such a high standard. Like most people would say, my God, he produces an awful lot of stuff. Okay. Some other people might say he produces a load of crap. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But I feel like I'm not producing or getting stuff done at my typical cadence. Okay. Old Jerry would have been whipping me, kind of like, new Jerry post 10 years of therapy and support and openness. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just not very productive at the moment. I know that I'm going to come through this and I'll be back again.
You did, I think, score 35 on that busy idiot scale, right?
Oh yes, true. Yeah.
I mean,
I am
possibly wasting idiot. A little energy there. Just, I don't want to be your school marm, but
there is, Joff Outlaw and Brad Marshall from a previous episode earlier this year.
That was a great episode.
Yeah, they're great. Like both of them are really fantastic, and it's a great book. But if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it, folks.
Busy Idiots brought to you by
calling them out, But generally speaking, in your world as a productivity kind of expert, if you want, because we're going to talk about the Sukha in a minute. I've used it and I've enjoyed it as well. I want to understand.
I'm very grateful to hear that.
No, I'll definitely come to that in a minute. It's definitely helped the fact that I've been using the product. But let me know around your thoughts on when you're working within an organization, when you're working within, say you're working in a manic industry like the film industry, who dictates what good productivity is? That's what I'm really interested in. Like, what role do you have to play in that? Your own mindset.
I'm passionate about that answer, so I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
I believe strongly, I have a really strong thesis that we all have something great inside. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? So leaders, great leaders are the ones that bring the right people into the organization. Like, hey man, Jerry, we're here. We're going to invent cold fusion. We're going to cure cancer. We're going to write the best romantic comedies. Whatever that thing is, the leader expresses, here's our mission. And here's how we treat each other. Here's the culture. Here's how our values are expressed through action. This is how you're going to treat your colleagues. You're going to treat our customers. You're going to treat our competitors, right? So if you bring the right people into that organization where they go, yeah, man, mission, I'm in. I absolutely want to cure cancer. I'll work day and night on that, right? My dad died of lung cancer. I'm in. And yes, this is your values align with mine. Then you as a leader, your job is to give people the conditions so that great thing inside comes out. You lead the lab with the guy who goes, I figured out why the DNA is doing this, or I have a new twist on romantic comedy, or this is the most amazing recipe. We should box this and sell it across the world, or whatever that thing is. Like that, I think fundamentally is you set the conditions in which your people can do the great thing which they're capable. So I think that's a really important part of, I think that comes from leadership, right? It's finding the right people, expressing what you're doing to attract the right people and going, here are the conditions for you to go do that thing.
Yeah. And also if you're looking for a new role, you can look at the leaders and see how they're performing and what their productivity is like. Can I share a little story about an experience that I had years and years ago about a close call that I had? It was with
as long as you were clothed in the story, yes.
It was a big consultancy, begins with B and ends in G. And I was interviewing for them, BCG. And we were...
Well, it's not, Bain.
I don't want to get sued. I can't name them BCG. Anyway, right. And the first couple of interviews were cool. Like, it was very chill. And, it came around to signing a contract. And I looked at the partner who was bringing me in. And I was like, first of all, why are they calling meetings at 7:30 in the morning? Okay, right. I was like, okay, maybe they're being really accommodating because they know that I've got another gig and I have to be in for 9:00. And I was like, okay, cool. But I noticed that the partner was, looking a little bit more tired the third interview. And I said to him, just before I sign, I want to know what time you got home at last night from work. And there was silence and they looked around at each other and they go, why? Why do you want to know? And I go, because I just want to try and understand really what it was like, what it is like this week in the office. I said, well, I got home at 11:30 last night. And I said, well, I know you live an hour from here. So you got up at 5. I said, so you would have, because you'd mentioned he trained. And he goes, yeah. And I go, is this a typical week? Or is this like an exception?
These are good questions, Jerry. Yeah. Okay.
Is this an exception? And you could see the shift in the energy literally in the room. They're like, they were kind of going, why are you asking this? Because I just want to know what I'm getting into here. Like, actually, you said a few things. I said, you're getting by in about 5 hours sleep a night. Is that right? And he was like, yeah, pretty much. Like I'll be in the office till maybe 10 o'clock. And I said, you've got kids. I said, so you don't get to see them. So I was playing out my own kind of like existence. Like I knew I have kids.
Good questions.
So I was like, actually, do you know what? I'm going to put a pause on this. If the contract is so important, I said, let me come back to you in a couple of days. And I walked out on the contract and I said, look, I just don't think this is the right fit for me. So that was a close call for me in my own career because it probably would have set me off in a completely different direction. But I want to understand, from your own perspective, that productivity piece and the leadership stuff. If you are in an organization and you are being forced to work those hours, what steps can people do to kind of control their own destiny within that environment? Because you're lucky, you are privileged. You got to walk away from a massive role. You got to set up a business, you got equity and you got investors and so forth. Not everyone has that opportunity. So what do you say to people who are in that situation that maybe want to learn about able to put some boundaries around what they consider to be productive?
That is a lovely and very generous question. And by the way, I love that you conducted your interview in the interview. That's pretty baller.
A long time ago.
I'm glad you weren't like, Mike, how many times a week do you think about killing yourself? Just roughly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So yes, if you are an individual contributor, where there are people, you have leadership, you have management, and it's not like you are a small business owner where you kind of set your own hours, you set your own pace of things, right?
Yeah.
When there are those, structures put in place and you have to work within them, then I think the question you ask yourself is, how well do I know myself to make this work? I'll give you one example with kind of a funny story. There is a concept of chronotype, which I know you know what that is, but just to set the table for anyone playing at home who's like, what is that? Chronotype is the simple concept. There are times of day you're better at doing certain things than others.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the first time I saw this in actual practice, which was there's a screenwriter, Ron Bass, who's in the $1 Million Club, right? Best Friend's Wedding, Rain Man, like tons of stuff in the 80s and 90s. He was famous for not talking to his family in the morning. Wouldn't talk, not a word. He's like, I'm not the dad who's going to be like, hey, who wants pancakes? You know, like, who did their homework? He's like, if I talk to you, I can't hear my character's voices in my head anymore, so I have to write that in the morning. So, you know, after 9, I'm there. We'll do whatever you want to do, but just count me out. Yeah. That was his extreme awareness of chronotype, which he had developed over time. He's an attorney, by the way, who turned screenwriter. And he understood he had a pocket of time in the morning. So he would get up sometimes 3, 4, 5 in the morning to write words, dialogue. And he did that so well. You know, A-list actors like Julia Roberts, Tom, Dustin, like they would look at a stack of scripts on the desk and say, these are the words I want to say, which is very, very hard because they have everything being offered to them, right? Yeah. So he was that good at it, but he knew in the afternoon he could do collaborative stuff like, Jerry, let's figure out the third act. It's not working right. Let's brainstorm some ideas, right? Or do studio notes or things like that. So that concept of chronotype is one thing that you can come to understand about yourself. Cost nothing. You don't need anybody's app, book, you know, master class. You can simply say, you know what? I know that these are the hours in which I'm going to be working. And there are times when I'm going to be better at returning emails and putting in my expense report and things, you know, returning my Slacks or my Teams messages. And there are other times when I have to do the deep work that turns heads in the staff meeting when people are like, yeah, what Jerry said, we should do that like right now, right? That's the work that advances your career. No one gets a medal for returning emails, right? Inbox 0, thanks. So that is one concept. You can do it with a pencil and a piece of paper. Just log for a week or two, morning and afternoon. Like, what did you work on? Not minute by minute. Like 8 to 11, I worked on blog posts, or 3 to 5, I coded. And how did you feel? When you look at that after 5 to 10 days, you'll see the patterns. And you'll go, man, I should always be coding in the morning. I'm more clear. Whereas I should be doing, this sort of shallow work, as Cal Newport would say, right after lunch. I'm always kind of in a carbo haze and I can do low quality kind of, easy things then. So that is one way to start to manage your day. Say if this is the expectation of how I'm working, then how do you apportion that? Now, there is the concept of flow states, which I don't know if I've heard an episode. Have you done a full episode on flow states? Because I don't know if I've heard it.
Not really. We've touched on it.
Okay, so maybe let's talk about that for a moment, because this is a really big component of deep work, as Cal would say, which is, and again, just to set the table for those driving who are like, I've heard about it, but what is it exactly? Because people call it being in the zone, people call it the genius zone, like lots of things, right?
Yeah.
Hungarian-American psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi had a thesis. He's like, high performers in these disparate fields seem to describe the concentrated states they get into in very similar ways. The states where they do the work that makes them famous, whether it is Michael Jordan playing basketball, Picasso painting Guernica, some guy inventing whatever, I want to understand that. So like Prometheus, he wanted to go up, find fire on Mount Olympus, bring it down to the rest of us. At the end of his exploration, he wrote a book called Flow. Yeah. It is the seminal work on this. It is why it's called a flow state. And he said, I think this is the most beautiful metaphor I can use from what I found, which is we're all on the water paddling forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you, it magnifies your efforts. And that's what it seems like these people know how to do, to get into a state where the river carries you forward.
Okay.
And it is an amazing work. And now we get to benefit from standing on his shoulders and a lot of other people who have built upon this, like, Stephen Kotler's of the world and, Near and all these people, right? So now that we've set the table a bit, why is that important?
Yeah.
Because if you are an individual contributor, Maybe you're a graphic designer. Maybe you're a copywriter. Maybe you're an engineer, a software engineer or something, or hardware engineer. And there's a portion of your career advancement that is doing that deep work that causes people to turn heads and go, oh my God, you're the one who wrote that research paper on so-and-so, right?
Yeah.
And Mihai laid out very clear conditions precedent to help you get into that state. A lot of, the platform I built is built on his book to say, oh, here's stuff that helps you get into that. It does take you 15 to 23 minutes, research shows, to drop in when you start to say, I'm going to do this. You don't just like sit down, you're in a flow state. And if you get interrupted, it takes you another 15 to 23 minutes to get back into that place where the world falls away, time falls away, distractions, you're just in it, doing great work, right?
Yeah.
So if you can find those periods in your day when you actually block your calendar for a meeting with yourself, that's great. Because if your calendar is every hour on the hour, some 30-minute Zoom or, Teams meeting or Google Meet, you're never going to get into flow. You're going to be meeting, shallow work, meeting, shallow work, meeting, shallow work, and your career will go sideways and you'll be frustrated because you're not doing anything meaningful. So this is just two ideas of understanding your chronotype and saying, okay, if I want to do the great work that advances me, that advances my team, let me find that block of an hour or two each day and just keep it sacred.
The conditions, I'd love to know about your own conditions for enabling the flow state. It's different for everybody. So we can't lift and shift what Stephen is talking about here and apply it. Maybe you can, but like in my scenario, it might be a little bit different. But let's talk about enabling the conditions. It's not about rose, petals on the ground and candles here for anyone who's listening. I'd love to understand what your conditions are to enter the flow state, to become more productive.
Let me give you two to begin with. And there are a number of conditions precedent, but these are both ones that have interesting sort of stories behind them, right?
Yeah. And also, how do you find that out? How do you find your conditions?
Well, largely through determination, experimentation. If you start by saying, I'm going to take this time tomorrow, it has to be an hour or two. It's not 15-minute chunks, right?
Yeah.
In that time, I have a task I'm going to do. Let me see what I can do to create the conditions to be in flow. So actually, let me preface this with some things that Mihai wrote. Mihai said, it seems that even for these high performers that do amazing things, a couple things have to be true. They have to believe the thing they're doing is meaningful. It's not stapling papers or shuffling stuff around or returning random emails. It has to be like, no, this is actually, if I do this right, this is going to affect something somewhere, right?
Yeah.
He said, you have to have skills that apply. So it is not Michael Jordan painting. It's not Picasso trying to throw a basketball. And if you're doing something where your skills apply, it has to be challenging. So to extend that metaphor, it's not Michael Jordan playing an exhibition game at his kid's high school. You know what I mean? You're not in flow. Flow is Michael in the NBA. Flow is Picasso standing back from Guernica and going, is this what I had in my head? Is this what I'm trying to do? And he said, you also need to have some feedback. It's very hard to be in flow if you just feel like you're pouring energy into a black box with no idea if it's good or bad. You have to be able to stand back, look at the scoreboard, or, run compile your code and see if it runs, that sort of sense. So these are some of the conditions. And this is a short podcast, so I don't want to go too deeply in all this, but these are some of the things that he wrote about. So now you ask me, how do I experiment and how do people experiment to say, like, what are the things that help me get there?
Sure.
One thing a lot of people have researched is music. And it speaks to exactly what you said, where it's like, you know what? I found my own path. I may not be the mainstream. I discovered this as we were building, the Sukha app, which is a flow state app, straight up. I don't usually call it that because flow state, some people don't know what it is. I call it a focus app. It is founded on the principles of flow, right? Music is a big one where for most people, research shows 60 to 90 beats per minute, music that's at that speed, that is non-vocal, ambient, melodic music, certain key signatures, stuff like that, seems to help them get into that concentrated state where the clock falls away, distractions are blocked, you're just in it, right?
Yeah.
So I happen to have a bunch of friends who are film composers with time on their hands, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey man, here's the research sort of points to like this kind of stuff. Could you compose stuff? So we have like 1,000 hours of this music. And I thought, okay, we got that covered. it is true in doing that, because I speak to a lot of our members. I love our membership. There are some people who are like, hey, man, I just have to listen to blank 90s gangster rap or like heavy metal or something, or, classical music or something. Like, that's the only way I get there. So I can't just do it with like lo-fi music or, this kind of ambient sound or trance or whatever. In the course of doing that, where I had to say, hey, we're not really going to offer playlists that are like 90s gangster rap. It's not exactly our vibe, but you can hook up your Spotify or whatever. Something that I discovered that I didn't see coming. A friend up in Marin who does the sound for the Lucasfilm game, basically Star Wars games. Mm-hmm. He was traveling. I think it was his son's high school graduation gift. The family went to Nepal. And he came back and said, Stephen, while I was there in Kathmandu one day, there was this rain. It was this lush, delicious, just like pounding rain. And I had my audio equipment there. So I recorded it. Do you want it? That could be kind of cool. So not knowing what would happen, threw it up as a playlist. Just called it Himalayan Dream Rain. 2 hours of just rain coming down. That's all. There was no magic. There's no music. It was just rain.
Yeah.
It's our third most popular playlist.
Easily, I'd say. I would listen to it.
Yeah. And then from that, we experimented. We're like, well, what about the sound of a stream in Japan? And then we did a lake in Canada near my partner, this place called Emerald Lake. We hear like a little bit of birds. I don't know if you're a bird guy, you bring me what kind of bird it is, but that. And that became incredibly popular. And I was like, wow, had not read a lot of research on like nature sounds. But when I talked to the people listening, they're like, it evokes this thing for me in my head where I used to, when I was a child, go read at my parents' house or that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really interesting association that I don't think a lot of people have figured out, including, and this is when we were running during the pandemic, people asked about coffee shops. We threw up a playlist that is simply 2 hours of a coffee shop in Vienna, Austria. That's all it is. You hear, the espresso, your little coffee cups clanking. And people who work at home became really happy with this sense of, it gives me a feeling of being around people without the distraction of being around people, So that was one of the discoveries I made of it's like how important music is to create this oral environment around you. And there's a second one I want to throw in there. I'll make it really short, which is also mental space.
Yeah.
How spaces affect us mentally. And I saw this when I was back working with Roland and Dean. They would always go right down at this rental villa in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And when they were going off to the right the next one, it was rented. It was so important, Roland, he bought the villa so they could go down there and write. They came back 6 weeks later with the script for Independence Day, which became the third highest grossing movie in history, right? But it was that important to them that their mental space was, we're in this zone when we go there. Same thing with Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orsi when I was at DreamWorks with them. Like, these are the guys who wrote Transformers 1 and 2 and Star Trek 11 and Fringe and Hawaii Five-0 and Eagle Eye and The Proposal, just tons of stuff, right? They would rent a room at a hotel, the Universal Hilton across the street from DreamWorks, from the Universal lot. Not a glamorous property, but I realized for them, it evoked the thing of dorm room because they had met back in school. And I think their first scripts were probably written sitting on the edge of the bed, one person at the little desk in the room. And that's when they had to buckle down and write like Transformers 2 for God knows how many $1 million.
Yeah.
They weren't in Puerto Vallarta, but it was that mental thing of like, once they got in there, they were back to being those scrappy writers who had to prove themselves and get this done. So those are two like interesting things I've noticed about getting into flow, both of which you don't really need anyone's app, including mine. You can just
you can do it.
Know yourself.
One of the things, again, I'm playing this devil's advocate of somebody who's working in an organization. And first of all, offices may not be designed to encourage this. Okay, this is an important factor to call out. Like if you're working in hot desk scenarios where people are coming and going in front of you, again, some people might thrive in that environment. But what I used to find when I'm doing thinking and knowledge work, I would have this pressure start to building behind me that someone was going to interrupt me. It was in an uncontrolled environment, and
But you have headphones. Aren't headphones a great way to tell people don't talk to me?
I know it's more of a social cue. And then Luke, who I used to work with in Australia as well, had this idea of putting a little red flag up on his computer. And then that that was kibosh. People were like, no, you can't do that. That's too rude. And I was like, well, is it really? I said, because like we're being paid to do a job, like, and we love what we do. So, but I used to find that was a big thing when I was in an organization, that I couldn't help myself sometimes than tell people just to piss off when they would come up and they break that flow. They would break that state, because it is hard enough to get back into it. And that breaking of it is really difficult, or is really difficult to get back into. Now, what can people do if they're in that office environment? Like, what have you heard? Because I know you've got 34,000.
The thing you're doing right now, like what you just talked about, you have beautiful, those who are, listening in the car, I can't see this, but various great headphones on. It is amazing what a cue that is, what you just said. Yeah. Like, that is a great way to just be like, you know what, I'm inside my head right now doing the things that I'm doing that are not like at a whiteboard with 10 people shouting out ideas. That's a different thing without headphones. So it is the most obvious cue to do that. Because you're right, those being in cubicles, being in open office spaces, which are so popular, hot desking and all that, super distracting. Yeah. So that's a great one.
It is. Like, I know my wife works for Google, and I'm pretty sure everyone in their department were all given noise cancelling headphones.
Right?
I was like, well, that's great, but why don't they just design an office that allows for the different ways of working or different styles?
Oh, you radical thinker, you.
What are you seeing out there with organizations that, because we're not talking about stuff that is not in the mainstream. Like, a lot of people will know this stuff, but yet it still feels like organizations don't want to hear this stuff. They don't want to enable more, which is crazy when you think about it, because the productivity and the benefits are there. Why aren't organizations jumping into this and creating more offices that allow for cocooned working and cocooned thinking? Like, what's holding this back?
Okay, so there are a couple of pieces to that answer. One piece is, yes, LLMs, which people generally conflate with AI in general. They just call LLMs AI, right? But large language models are simply Google autocomplete on steroids. That's what they are. They're just simply saying, hey, can I guess what the next word or idea is that you're going to want? The same way, Google autocomplete is like, oh, you're typing this word. Probably the next character is this, right?
Yeah.
So the jobs that do rely upon that kind of like rote pattern matching are going to be gone. So that's a large set of the jobs in the job market today, right? So what does that leave? Because as much as people feel like it's magic, this machine is thinking it, the LM is not actually thinking. It is just pattern matching. It's doing probabilistic. Hey, you wrote, the weather outside looks, and it's like, well, 62% chance the next word is rainy. Let me try it out and see if Jerry likes rainy. Oh, he didn't like rainy. I'll try sunny. It's just probability. So the jobs that aren't like that, where it is original thought, those kind of jobs, for at least the near term, are safer than the jobs where it's like, hey man, just crank out more of this. There's a great pattern. You can match it, but I can get the machine to match it for free. So you'll be gone soon, right? So that said, those kind of jobs, which you refer to the term knowledge work, right?
Yeah.
Those are ones where to do that kind of knowledge work, you do need time to do it, like a block of time. You can't do it 17 minutes in between Zooms. Yeah. And if you are an IC and you are creating these novel things, your leadership ultimately, if they're decent, and if they're not decent, get to another company, they're going to recognize, wow, the things that really help our company move forward come from these practices. Sure. And you can be vocal about them to say, hey guys, you know what I found? That thing we all loved last week, the way I did it was I blocked out an hour in the morning. If you notice, no one can book my calendar 8 to 9 a.m. or whatever time, right? Yeah. Do you want to all try that? Maybe we could try together to produce these great ideas. If we agree like 8 to 9 a.m. or whatever time we agree upon is sacred. So no one's going to book Zooms then. We're not going to Slack each other like, hey, Jerry, can you send me the TPS report right now and get me out of flow? Wait until 9. Yeah. Or if you do Slack me, just assume I won't see it until 9.
Yeah.
And if ultimately leadership is like, hey, how do we win, as opposed to how do we enforce discipline upon thou, right? Then leadership will recognize that, because that's going to differentiate the companies going forward. Because everyone, by the way, is going to have LLMs at zero cost. It's a commodity business. It'll be like buying electricity. It'll be like buying internet service. It's not like it's going to be an expensive thing. So it kind of levels the playing field for that kind of work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get your thoughts a little bit more on distractions and notifications. You work in crazy work.
For those who haven't heard your episode with Busy Idiots.
I know, yeah. But generally, like the cost to breaking that flow state. And generally, one of my most common peeves is within notification worlds, there's certain people in my life that like they don't have any restrictions. The importance of childcare and spouses and partners and so forth.
Yeah,
they tend to be the most common distractors. Okay, so the most important stuff. And I noticed in the Sukha, like one of the things that you can do is when you're about to try and get into that flow state, you scan a QR code and it kills the notifications on your phone until you've completed your task. And I love it. If people don't have the Sukha app, what advice do you have to them on being able to manage those different priorities of notifications? What's important, what's not important?
Oh, Jerry, that is like throwing a slow ball right down across the home plate. Like, I couldn't wait to hit this ball, right? You were speaking to my heart. Sorry?
Yeah. I want to hear it. I'm dying.
So I'm going to be on my soapbox for a moment. Anyone at home was like, dude, this guy is so passionate. Like, he needs to like have a beer. Yes, this is that part of the podcast. So just like dig in. Like Mihai had a very strong thesis about, hey man, these high performers have this way of doing this thing. I'm going to find out what it is. I have a very strong thesis, which is, we have this great thing inside us. And how do we unlock it? Or how do our leadership give us the conditions to unlock it, right? So here's the deal. The $1 trillion companies, their business model is steal your life, period, full stop. And they are not embarrassed about it anymore. This is not like 5-10 years ago. It is in their S1s, it's in their quarterly reports. They are very clear going, hey man, the more people's lives we can steal, the better our performance will be for our shareholders. So it is our responsibility to the shareholders, to the stakeholders, to steal everyone's life all the time. And guess what? When you're a $1 trillion company, you have the money to hire the best behavioral psychologists and put them on staff, the best UI UX designers, the best engineers, with the sole goal of saying, steal more. And they're really, really, really good.
Yeah.
So on that tug of war for your life, on one side, there are $1 trillion companies with the smartest people. On the other side of that rope is you.
Yeah.
How is that fair? Because I don't think you or I or anyone listening wants to be that old girl or guy on the sofa that's still scrolling and double tapping, being like, well, I could have been somebody. I had that idea. I could have written that book. Oh yeah, I could have started that company. Yeah, but I just, I was busy with other things. Yeah. No one wants to be that person. No one wants to be around that person. So it begins with intention. And again, you don't need anybody's app for this, mine or anybody's. You wake up in the morning, you go, what is it I need to do today to move towards releasing the great thing inside me? Write that thing down.
Yeah.
Stick it on a index card or a piece of paper or Post-it. Put it right in front of you all day long. This is the thing I need to do to move my life forward. Period. There are tools that will help you, which, as you know, I've invested my life in building one. Mm-hmm. It is not the only one. There are beautiful tools made by other people. But what I care about is that you do something with your life, not that you use my tool.
Yeah. So on your own phone, and I'm getting closer to the Busy Idiots episode here, what apps do you absolutely not have? And name and shame.
I will tell you, I have almost everything on my phone because I try, as soon as I hear about a distraction, to understand it.
Okay.
The ones that stick with me, the ones that are really like the slippery slope where I'm like, oh man, I lost half an hour. TikTok is probably the worst.
Yeah.
YouTube is probably number 2.
Yeah.
Not a big Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram person. It is amazing how well those two understand what hooks me, which can be as bizarre as, hey man, the algorithm knows that you watched a video on this weird React code thing and how to use it, but we're going to suggest to you this interesting video on how the A380 electronic system works. And I'm like, I love stuff like that. Okay, I'll watch that for 8 minutes, and then you're gone. And it's just, they get you. So
Absolutely.
That's a lot of what I do, with my company, is just say, what can we do? So when you pick up your phone, you have a smart assistant just goes, hey, Jerry, like, is your phone helping you get where you need to go?
Yeah.
And then you have that 1 second of, who do I want to be?
So
we're
let's
not
talk
telling
about,
you, we're letting you choose.
Let's talk about the Sukha, and where you're at with it now at the moment. Why should people try it?
People should not try it. It is something where people first need to decide if they want to do something with their life. My app, Freedom, Time Doctor, like all these things, these are not going to solve your problem. These are the tools when you decide the problem needs to be solved and you're like, I am sick of this. I'm sick of this rut that I'm in. And I'll tell you, I named my company this weird name. People at home are probably like, how do you spell Sukha? What does it mean? Why you name it that, right? This will tell you everything you need to know. Laura, I met in New York in yoga. I married the girl on the mat to my left, right? Yoga is a part of our daily life. It's a beautiful physical, spiritual 1 hour where I get to clear my head and feel great, right? So when we got married, we went to Bali for our honeymoon, which I'm very grateful. I'm at a point in my life where I can just do stuff like that. Yeah. And it's a wonderful place. Just do yoga, hang out on the beach, and be together for 10 days.
Yeah.
We had a working version of what became Sukha with a working title. And I said to Laura, you know what? The next 10 days, no one in the company is going to bug me. They know I'm on my honeymoon. I wonder if in this period of calm, like the name I've been craving will come to me. The way like Amazon is not called like bookstore. Nike's not like shoe seller. You're like, I want to do something that's not like flow state app or distraction blocker, that sort of thing. And she said, I wish that for you. Hopefully in 10 days, the universe speaks to you, the muses sing, whatever.
Yeah.
We got there and I said, I think what would seed my imagination is if I talk to maybe 2 or 3 of our current members today, just for 5 minutes and go, what's your favorite thing? And maybe that'll bubble up something. She's like, go for it. I'm going to the pool. You, my friend, I will see you at dinner. So I spoke to 3 people who in the group chat said, yeah, I'll talk to you for a minute. I asked them the same question. I was like, what's your favorite feature? Do you love that smart assistant that keeps you off the websites and the phone? Do you love the music? Do you love the Pomodoro timer? Do you love the task? What is it, right? And the third guy, who's still a member, I see him in there, we did our 5 or 10 minutes. And I was like, thank you so much for your time. I want to be respectful. We said, 5 or 10 minutes, let's go. And he said, Stephen, you asked the wrong questions. I was like, okay, fair enough. What was the right question? He's like, you should have asked me why I pay you. I'm like, dude, we charge like 30 cents a day. I don't collect a salary for this. I do this because I think the world needs it. And like, okay, but I'll take the bait. Why do you pay me? He said, the past year or two, I find I have 2 kinds of days. At 3 o'clock, I'm playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I'm down on myself. Where did the day go? I suck. I didn't do the big thing I needed to do today. And he said, I realized the difference is in the morning. Did I open your app and run it in the background? I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I was like, wow. So I go to dinner with Laura. I'm like, I spoke to this dude today who's more articulate about what I'm doing than I am. This is what he said. And she was like, yeah, that's really good. And we're going to bed. And she's brushing her teeth. We're brushing her little teeth in her little bathrobes. And she looked at me. She goes, you wanted the universe to speak to you. It did through that guy. That's, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms like prana for your life force and, karma and dharma. And she's like, that's Sukha. He describes you that feeling of when you're in your lane, doing the thing you're meant to do, and you're good at it. You can do it with ease. That guy wants to be in control of his life. And that's what you give him. She's like, that's what you should call your company, the Sukha company. And I bought it from my phone. I checked the website. It was available. I bought it for $14 that night from bed. And that's why we called this, because that is ultimately what I want, is the people who have an intention and go, you know what? I want to do that thing. I want to be in control of my life. I don't want to give it up to Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or, Evan Spiegel or any of these guys. Great.
I love it. Stephen, look.
I know we've been talking a lot. I know you got to wrap up.
No. It's
sorry.
fantastic.
I got on my soapbox.
It's not talking a lot. Like, it's all. I'm processing an awful lot of what you've spoken to me about. Like, so, and I really, really enjoyed it. I do wrap up every episode on This Is HCD by thanking people for their vulnerability and their space and their time and their energy. We've spoken a couple of times, so giving me that time was really powerful as well. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for people to do that? And I know you've given a discount as well for Sukha to try it. Like, so I'll put a link to it.
I think two things. If there's any reference that I've made that someone wants to know more about, it does not have to be about anything that I work on. Yeah. Hey man, Cal Newport you talked about, or Near, who's Near and what's his time blocking or whatever. My email address is very public. It is Stephen@thesukha, THESUKHA.co for the Sukha company. You are welcome to drive me an email, go, hey man, who's Cal Newport? Or what should I read? I will send you back some link that hopefully answers your question. I will not write you back 19 paragraphs about the story of my life because I don't have time, and nor do you want to read it. So I do get back to all my emails in 24 hours if I'm not sick or traveling. So that is a free, open invitation. If someone wants to learn more, like, I've done the research, I've done the reading, and I'm happy to share that. And second thing is, if anyone wants a tool to help them execute, of course, come try the Sukha. It's free for 7 days. No credit card. No bullshit.
Fantastic. Stephen, listen, thank you so much for your time. And
this was awesome. Thank you for having me.